2, 1. Panel, ladies and gentlemen, in religiously diverse areas like in Jerusalem, where we see a melting pot of different religions like Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam, is exactly where we see the highest risk of violence and religious persecution, wherein people can even be as far as being taken out of their homes, taken out of the mosques, being dragged out of churches, and beaten and hurt. As a consequence, what naturally happened over time is that these particular individuals started segmenting and being grouped in terms of different locales in order to be able to protect their own safety and capacity to still freely be able to exercise their particular religion. We believe that religious violence and persecution would motivate our side of the house, and we think the only way to be able to solve this in the short term is to be able to draw these artificial and later on legislative cultural lines in order to make people feel safe and prevent the situation from becoming more volatile. I recognize this is a value judgment debate, but so the debate doesn't go crazy, let me mech out a couple features of our model in terms of how this grouping will work. Number one, this will be proportional to religious ethnicity, and there's going to be, of course, a dominant majority. That is a trade-off we're willing to make, and we think that in terms of these particular individuals, those in the minority may, in terms of size, have a lesser space in order to be operate. But the trade-off we're willing to make is we rather have them a small ounce of autonomy as opposed to in status quo, where they're either pushed to the margin or the wayside by the majority who don't recognize any form of legitimacy, or even being drowned out and oppressed within that majority when they can't even feel safe within their own neighborhood, can't even feel safe within their own skin. The second is, we're not in any way going to hamper mobility. We recognize that the grouping sort of organizes you in terms of where you stay, where you pray, where you be able to sleep. But we recognize people's right to be able to have to go somewhere else to be able to work or have to travel, etc. The example here is Jerusalem, and we think that the heart of this is being able to protect certain sacrosanct or sacred areas for worship. That motivates our side of the house. If any of that was unclear for the best debate, I can take a POI from opening. 3, 2, 1. Closing?
Yes,
Yeah, go for it.
Do you consider a state to have different constituencies in itself?
Yeah, we think that in status quo, whatever like parliament or government you're going to have is going to be there. But we recognize that in this fashion of grouping, they're of course going to have their own form of representation on the international or local government, similar to status quo. We have a lot of religious party lists, for instance, but even in terms of their own constituencies, we think it's good for them to be able to still organize their way within their own particular religion. You might have a bishop, a cardinal, a set of priests for Christianity, or like an imam for a Muslim kind of mosque, for instance. Closing opposition? Anything off your mind? 3, 2, 1. All right. Moving on to my case coming from Prime Minister. We are motivated by 3 things. The first is a preventive measure to be able to protect the peace at best, or at worst, a reactionary measure to be able to hedge or be able to quell certain conflict, which leads to literal loss of jobs, loss of life, and loss of people's capacity and dignity to be able to feel safe. The second is, on an individual level, to be able to preserve your own capacity to be able to express themselves. The thought experiment here is like Maslow's hierarchy, meaning religion, something that is a basic need for people psychologically and emotionally, is something we think we have to be able to protect, even if the social contract infringes on other people wanting to live with you, or even within your own social contract of you wanting to live with someone else. And thirdly, on a collective idea in terms of where can societies best come and coalesce together to be able to form the most effective communities and systems to be able to get support and be able to be free, meaning you're comfortable to be able to go with someone who has the same religion as you, or you're able to talk to your own local pastor, someone above you, or even someone you're mentoring. Why does this uniquely happen in grouping, and how can it happen better compared to on their counterfactual, which is probably status quo or this hodgepodge of plurality? A, we recognize that plurality is important and it's good, and opposition might give this simplistic idea and say, wait, if there's plurality, then they're all good. Kumbaya, they're all used to it already. But we think the reason why grouping is so important is because it's so diverse. It could be as simple as, let's say, a 90% Christian majority, a 10% Muslim minority, or it might even be like 98 and then 0.5, 0.1, 1. You have so many kinds of individuals, and that is exactly what we want to be able to present. We want to be able to protect these particular individuals in order to be able to feel safe, because absent this form of grouping, it becomes dependent on the capacities of other people. But we have to understand, oftentimes in these very tense locations where everyone is expressing their own capacity, what often happens is that you have certain tension. Because we have to admit that a lot of these religions, for instance, are diametrically opposed. Meaning one religion might support monogamy, the other might not support it. One religion might be a bit more liberal and support things like queer and gay rights, and the other might stone you or condemn you from there. These fundamental juxtaposed ideologies, especially in these very volatile situations, are precisely what we want to be able to segment. We recognize in a perfect world, yay, we can all live together, it can be all good, but we're here to be able to reduce religious persecution, we're here to be able to reduce people's capacity to be able to be offended in order for them to be able to feel safe in their sacrosanct areas. Yes, plurality is good, but it creates a certain volatility and risk for things to go wrong, which is the biggest harm on their side of the house. Even if it's a small chance, someone being stoned, a woman being beaten even though she's pregnant, or a queer individual being stripped of their clothing and dignity is something we really want to be able to avoid. And ultimately, what we champion coming from opening government is a methodology and capacity to be able to do it. We are very proud to open this debate.